I'm here with Austin-based author and speaker Tom Singer and Paul Grabowski, the Chief Marketing Officer at Bracewell and Giuliani, and they co-authored a new book, The ABCs of Legal Marketing, and they are here to tell us about it. So, Tom, this is the fifth book you've written in the ABC series, so why shift the focus to the legal space?
Well, I probably should have started with a book for legal marketing because 12 years I sort of took a big jump in my career by going to work as the marketing and business development director for a law firm and then moved over to another firm. And then I decided I wanted to write books and be a trainer and a speaker and a master of ceremonies. And I probably should have started with the legal marketing book because that's what I was doing at the time. But I started with some more generic books. I started with a different series, but then in the ABCs group, I did the ABCs of networking and then the ABCs of speaking, one for conference attendance. Last year, we released the ABCs of entrepreneurship, and then this year, we did the ABCs of legal marketing.
Okay. And Paul, you're experienced in the legal marketing field. So are most lawyers aware of the importance of marketing and branding themselves in their communities, do you think?
Not as much as they should be. It's been my experience that we work with highly educated people who just sometimes don't understand necessarily the business component to it and what it takes to be known. Being a lawyer means that you're selling yourself as the product. And one of the best ways and easiest ways to brand yourself is to actually get out into the marketplace so that you are a known quantity. But it doesn't always come easy for lawyers. You know, when we look at it, when we start off, you can put lawyers into what we call a 20-60-20 approach. That means that 20% of them are fantastic rainmakers. They know how to do this. They're out there generating business. The 60% are the ones who give me job security, which is a nice thing. But they need some help along the way. They don't necessarily understand all the components of business development, marketing, branding. And then 20% are fantastic lawyers, but business development does not come easy to them. And so we have to work a little bit harder with those within the firm in order so that they all can work together.
Okay. And what are some of the most common mistakes you see lawyers making in terms of marketing?
Well, I think, quite honestly, the industry has changed so much over the past few years and the past decade. The biggest mistake is thinking that, well, I went to a fantastic law school, I graduated in the top 10% of my class, I was on law review, then all of a sudden the phone's going to ring and you're going to have business coming in the door. It is a business, and in order to be a business, you have to get out there and market yourself. You have to understand your target audiences. You have to understand the analytics of how it goes into run a business. And a lot of times lawyers don't think that way first because they think I have to be a great lawyer in order to work within this firm or just to be able to represent my clients.
Well, and I would like to add that one of the reasons that in traditional businesses salespeople get paid so much money is because selling is hard. And I think a lot of times people go to law school and they're really smart, and to be selected into a top firm, they're a top performer. And they just assume, like Paul said, doing the good work is going to make the phone ring. And then they're often surprised when they find out that selling is a really hard and important part of running a business, and nobody ever taught them this in law school.
So tell us a little bit about the book. What are some of the highlights from the tips that you provide for lawyers?
Well, there's a whole series of them. We work through the whole alphabet. So A is for analytics, B is for brand. We go through the whole alphabet. But there's a couple of things that I think lawyers, they think are easy, but they're not doing. And one is managing their contact list. It sounds like, well, duh, that's so simple. Of course they manage their contact list. But when I sit down and ask an attorney, who are the top 25 people on your list that you're trying to cultivate the relationship and move them forward so that you can develop more business, they look at me like a deer in the headlights. So some of the stuff that's in the book, people will say, well, Tom, this isn't rocket science. This is basic stuff. But if it's never been taught to them before, it can have a life-changing effect on the way they grow their practice.
Okay. And Paul, when you went to law school, what is something that you think you wish you had known then?
I wish I would have had this book, to be honest with you, because it's not something that is taught in law school. We're taught to be good practitioners. We're taught to be able to come out and work in any area, and we're taught to take the bar exam. And then when we come out, that's when we start working in a practice area or setting out our own shingle. But the problem is, or the issue is that lawyers need to understand, just like anyone who goes and gets an MBA, that you have to be able to generate business. And knowing these things, in addition to what you learn in law school, would really have, I think, changed my career path and a lot of others if they'd had some basic foundations in networking, in how to develop a business plan, in understanding what your brand is. Like we talked about, you can't just rely on where you went to law school and where you graduated in that class. You really need to be able to get out there and actually generate business.
I tell everybody that if you make your marketing and your business development a second-tier priority in your practice, you're going to have second-tier results. And what we're trying to do with this book is remind people that this isn't a tug-of-war between doing your business development, your networking, and building your brand, and being a great lawyer. It's not either or. You have to do both, and it doesn't take reinventing the wheel every single time you have a possibility of a new client or a new prospect. It's about doing little things consistently, day in and day out, over the long haul of a career that's going to let you build a practice where people are really admiring the high level of work that's coming in the door.
Okay. And the book discusses ways that lawyers can network within their communities and develop contacts that ultimately expand their businesses. So what are some simple ways that lawyers can reach out and earn the trust of people whom they hope to work with?
Well, I think one of the things they have to remember is they can't just join and write a check to every organization in town, because you don't get networking points or build your reputation by sending in checks and having your name listed in the membership directory. In order to build relationships, it takes time. I tell people it takes 10 or more times of encountering somebody, not before you have a great friendship, but before they even notice that you exist. And most of these groups that you can get involved with meet once a month. So it can take you a whole year just to get to the base level where people even notice you. So don't sign up and join everything. Pick one or two organizations that interest you and that you're going to actively participate in. And if you're with a larger firm, divide those up so that every attorney has one or two groups. If you have 20 people in your practice area and everybody goes to one organization every single month, you're going to have huge coverage in your community. So it's doing little things and not trying to do it all, but not assuming that just joining. Another mistake that firms make is they'll buy a table at a charity event, and they think somehow that's going to get them, noticed in the community. But then they never staff the whole table with their employees and their customers. So the table has their name on a little plate, and it's an empty table during the awards luncheon. So it's more than just writing checks and having a table. You have to actually physically show up and then think through who you're going to invite and who you're going to participate with at that table, or whoever you're encountering.
Tom's exactly right. I mean, one of the things that we try and do when I'm working with attorneys, or Tom is working with attorneys, is we tell them, look, you need to be out there, you need to join organizations, but you can't join all of them. And so one of the suggestions in the book is really pick one or two that you would find of interest both personally and professionally. And then you have to make the commitment to it. One of my favorite lines in the book was from a friend of mine, and he said, the chicken makes a contribution for breakfast, but the pig's committed. And you really have to think about it that way, because if you're just going to go in and use an organization to try and network to develop business, and the first thing you're doing when you get there is asking for business. We say throughout the book, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And you absolutely have to have that. And this is one of the easiest ways to do that. But you can't be all things to all people. Pick those one or two things, one or two organizations that you enjoy, whether it's your law school, it's your church, it's your kids' baseball organization, but get involved and be committed to it. Second thing is take a look at who's going to be in that organization. Is it going to benefit you? Because you do have to look at it that way. Are you going to get some benefit from a professional standpoint out of that organization? And then again, just make that time and be committed to it.
A mistake that people make is they think that networking is only for when they don't have business. So they run into one of those valleys in their practice where they're just not billing enough hours. So then they start showing up all over town and participating in different things. And as soon as they get business, they disappear again. But that's not networking. That's showing up and taking. In order to do this successfully, you have to show up and be part of a community, which means you have to be there to serve other people, help them get connected to people who can help them reach their goals. And then remember that networking isn't a verb. You don't go networking. Networking is a lifestyle. It's got to be something you're committed to when you're busy and when you're not as busy.
So brand is one of the things that you touched on earlier. So what does brand mean for a lawyer?
Well, I always think the best definition I've ever heard of what is a brand, it's pretty simple. A brand is a promise of how you're going to behave in all situations. So people are always watching and judging you, and it's through the little things you do how you set up your brand. So if you sign up for a lot of events and never show up, or you tell people you're going to be an active member of their board and then blow it off later, your brand is somebody who doesn't follow through. And it could be years later when you lose a deal because people say, well, they don't really follow through on what they do. Now, you would follow through when you're working with a client, but the only interaction they've ever had with you is in your volunteer activities, and you've established that reputation of somebody who just can't be taken seriously. So you have to think about everything you do every day creates that brand, because it just tells people how you're going to behave in the future.
Okay. And are there any tips you offer in this book that you think will really surprise people?
Well, I think the entire book, in some respects, everybody will walk away with something that will surprise them. The one thing that I have always found astounding in some respects, and we talked about it earlier, is understanding how to organize your contacts. Your contacts are absolutely critical to whether or not you're going to have a successful career in business, whether it be law firm or something else. And I think throughout this book, the way it's set up is that you can take any section of it in a short bite and be able to go read it and then do something and act upon it. So, for example, with your contacts, we tell people, and I actually encourage all the attorneys that I work with, that about every 6 months you should be looking at your contacts, you should be making sure they're up to date, and now with our electronically connected world, it's so easy to do. But the old school method would be just print them out, get a glass of wine, sit down, and go through them, and make sure they're up to date. Because if you wait too long to reach out to your contacts, they're going to know it if you don't stay up with them, and there are easy ways to do that. Remember when their birthdays are. Remember when their anniversaries, their kids, where they go to school, where do they go to college, are they great football fans? All of these things you can do very quickly. But I think we just kind of take for granted that we have these contacts out there, but we really don't keep them as up to date as we should, and that negatively impacts our ability to get business.
And I think people will be surprised by the one chapter that talks about be interested and be interesting. Because at the end of the day, if you just show up thinking you're here to get business and you're just passing out cards and just checking the box so you can go back and report to someone at the firm that you went to that networking event, people are going to know you're not really sincere and you're not engaged. So you have to take an interest in other people and ask a lot of questions and listen and really care about what they're trying to accomplish in their career. And then when it eventually is your turn to talk, you actually have to have something interesting to say. And if all you can do is talk about your job, and sometimes this happens not just with lawyers, but everybody, they go back to their comfort zone and they just recite everything about their career. When people ask them what they do, they just recite their resume. That kind of gets boring. So you need to be interesting, which means you need to be well-read, you need to know what's important in your community, and you have to be able to share your opinions with other people so that they take an interest in you, because if you're dull, they're not going to be interested in what you have to say.
So where can we find this book?
So the book will be available on Amazon.com. It'll also be available through my website at tomsinger.com. And Paul and I both like to speak and consult with attorneys and with legal groups, and it'll be available anywhere where you see us speak.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Tom and Paul, for joining us. Be sure to check out the ABCs of Legal Marketing. Thanks, everyone. All right.